want a ticket straight to them pearly gates.
So in this video, we're going to be talking about Bandai Namco once more and how their company is doing financially. Usually when I do these videos, I go all the way back to like 2022, 2023, when things first got rocky and Bandai Namco started to fight their way out of that deficit. But in order to not make this video repetitive, I will just have to refer you back to those previous videos, and we will pick up this conversation from October 15th, 2024, where they were still trying to climb themselves out of the hole, but they weren't super deep into it. You had breaking news which says Bandai Namco has canceled development on multiple games, including one related to One Piece and Naruto. They are also reducing staff through a traditional Japanese approach by sending their workers to rooms where they're given nothing to do, putting pressure on them to leave voluntarily. Now, what this is referring to is this screenshot here, which comes from a employee that basically had to like leak this message out to the public because they were suffering in silence. And Bandai Namco were basically they had a lot of games in development. I think they kind of increased their stockpile or what they were going to bring to the consumer base because of the pandemic. We know the pandemic inflated a lot of these companies' sales and player numbers and whatnot. So Bandai Namco probably were saying, let's make more games, let's make more stuff. Now, once the pandemic ended and a lot of these companies started to lose players or viewers or whatever, right? They started to collapse. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with Bandai Namco, where they canceled multiple different games. We don't know if Soul Calibur is a part of that. We'll have to wait and see if they put that out in the future. But then all of those games, it's like more than like 5, right? But all those games, the developers of those, they can't be fired like in NA or EU. Japanese law prevents it. So they had to basically force them to leave, make the job so uncomfortable to where they quit. And this is basically what was happening with Bandai Namco. It was dire all around. Now, as Bandai Namco began to restructure their company, they did start to find success, and that's what we're here talking about today. Before we dive really deep into that, first, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, but then two, I want to bring up this point from Harada and give his perspective on Bandai Namco executives before we see what type of success they're reaching now, right? Let's get a high-level developer's perspective on the executives. This is a question that came from an IGN interviewer where they basically asked Harada, you know, Tekken is all about throwing people into a volcano. Who are you thinking about doing that to in Tekken 8? And Harada says, the first people that came to mind were perhaps certain executives at our company. They change quite frequently, and some of them are only interested in obtaining the highest profits possible to further their careers, and they have no regard for development schedules or brand timelines. Some of them quickly flash into my head, but if I had to think and I had to pick a Tekken character, it's tough because most of them will probably survive if you look at past instances. And then he goes on to talk about how Jin may be that character because he needs to be pushed to the next level, and then in Tekken 8 we see Jin Kazama experience a type of birth through fire type of thing, right? But what he says there about the executives only caring about money and brand timelines, I mean, that was Bandai Namco all the way up until this October era where they started to change. Now, when you look at this new headline, I turned on reader mode to block out all the ads and pop-ups, but this comes from Automation. It says Bandai Namco sees a 995% annual growth in video game profits, bouncing back from MMO losses and canceled projects. Now you guys see why I said all that at the beginning of the video, because this was a major comeback. 2023, 2022 was a huge loss for them, and in a year's time they recovered like crazy. Bandai Namco consolidated financial report for fiscal year 2025 suggests growth of the group's video game sector. Bandai Namco Holding has published its consolidated financial results for the fiscal year ending in March 2025. The group saw yearly net sales and profit hits all-time highs, with its digital content business, console and mobile games significantly exceeding initial forecasts. According to reports, Bandai Namco video game sector saw net sale increased year on year by 22.3% to approximately 3.16 billion. Initially, the forecast was 2.57 billion, and a profit growth by 999% to 470 million. Initial forecast was 208 million. So Bandai Namco is going crazy now. They're getting so much success. Sales of console games were particularly a big contributor, as the reports highlight strong performance from Software's Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, as well as the new Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero, which has sold over 5.4 million units worldwide. Is that a typo? I think Dragon Ball sold more than 5.4 million units. I think that's a typo. Console game sales were up by 42.6% compared to the previous fiscal year, showing significant growth. Now, something I always do have to highlight as well is how Tekken 8 is not considered to be attributing to this success that Bandai Namco is celebrating right now. And also, even though Sparking Zero lost a majority of its player base, 90%, right? Bandai Namco still considers it a slam dunk. Bandai Namco live service games also performed better than expected, with sales increasing 3.5% year on year. The reports highlights licensed Dragon Ball One Piece mobile games, as well as Guken Idolmasters as the biggest contributor. It's worth noting that Bandai Namco's huge growth during fiscal year 2025 is also a reaction to previous year losses. During fiscal year 2024, the company saw a significant decline in profit due to in-progress projects being canceled, as well as the underperformance of the costly MMORPG Blue Protocol. Now, there's another headline here that says Bandai Namco alters executives' pay to encourage acting in the interest of shareholders. Now, we know that shareholders can be very greedy and they kind of promote these companies to be as very greedy as possible. So Bandai Namco altering the executives' pay to make them more beholden to the shareholders. For people who play video games and consume Bandai Namco's product, this is not a good headline at all. Bandai Namco is changing the way it's pay executives, which could put more pressure on them to make profits and appease shareholders. With the new system, as shared by the company, executives' pay will consist of 30% fixed salary or 70% performance-based remuneration. Previous, this ratio was set at 40-60. So it went from a 40-60 to a 30-70. In addition, half of the executive officers' total earnings will be stock-based instead of cash-based. So now the executives have more of a reason to inflate the stocks. Previous, this was 40%. This goal is to encourage executives to act in interest of company shareholders. I mean, we're going to see how this pans out. They're making a lot of money. They're finding a lot of success. But this is the thing, right? This is a billion-dollar company, one of the biggest video game companies on the planet. In Japan, they're third place to Sony and Nintendo. But you can see that even for them, it's not enough. They still want more and more and more. And now they're restructuring things to achieve that. We see how Tekken 8 is being swamped with over monetization, and this is exactly that. Further, the fixed salaries for executives will be capped at around 4.14 billion each year, a proportion of which will be added as a shareholding plan to purchase company stock. Bonuses will be based on whether Bandai Namco meets targets profits, earning per share, and sustainability. If they aren't met, executives may not receive a bonus. Wow. This change suggests executives will need to appease shareholders and could be focused on making profit over creativity. On the flip side, the company's recently abolished employee bonus in favor of raising average salaries mean entry-level positions now pay more. So this is the current state of Bandai Namco, and this is everything that they're doing to try to make more and more money. Now, how will this impact their games, their new projects, their existing projects? Will these developers who care about the quality of their game and making it as best as possible, will they be able to fight off these executives who are beholden to shareholders? I don't know.